We are live. Let a few moments to let things all fire up here. But welcome to the Rabid Atheist. I'm your host, Ed Raby, a former pastor turned atheist, now compassionate anti-theist. I'm going to wait a little bit, see if anybody arrives. But welcome to my channel. Of course, you can be watching this later, so I don't want to waste too much time waiting for people to necessarily come in again, but I do want to make sure that this discussion does take place. What became the impetus for this discussion on morality again was very simply a conversation I had yesterday with a theist. And so this gets to be a very, I want to talk about the emotions of moral discussions with theists, because a lot of times when I get into a moral discussion with a theist, it's very emotionally draining. Okay. Some of the comments I got before I even did this live stream from Elizabeth kind of point out it becomes a very disturbing thing to me. It's like they're diminishing my humanity. It's like every time I have a discussion with a theist on the subject of morality, it becomes a discussion where at first I'm like, okay, you're basically saying I don't have any basic human decency. I don't have any morality. I have no basis for my morality. There's a whole list of shit at that point that just pisses me off because it's a bold-faced, bigoted accusation, and I get tired of it. And yet at the same time, there was a time in my life when I was a theist that I probably held that view and probably said so to somebody who didn't believe. And I think that now that I look back at it, I'm like, okay, this is something that people are indoctrinated to believe. And so how do I get people past that? And so putting aside the emotions. And so what I have here today is some snippets from that conversation that I'm going to go over here in a minute. But, um, because this is the real truth, and a lot of theists don't want to accept this. We do have morals, we do have ethical standards. We just don't need a deity to enforce them. Okay, there's other considerations when it comes to morality, and I think a lot of people don't want to deal with it. They don't want to deal with the fact that atheists do have moral systems. In fact, I've gotten to the point, and I need to preface this whole discussion with the fact that I've gotten to my point in my own moral digging around and trying to figure things out and all that stuff. I've gotten to a point where I dislike the terms objective and subjective ethics, because I think people try to conflate two definitions of subjective into one. It's like it's subjective because it's based on your feelings, or the real definition in moral discussions, which is it's subjective to another person, that this moral system is related to something else. You don't really have moral questions for the most part, unless you have like two people trying to decide how to behave towards each other. That's when morality comes up. And morality seems to be uh, uh, just pull that right out. And the problem I often have with theists and conversations on morality is exactly what I'm going to demonstrate here in a minute with this conversation. I don't want to wait too long. I've only got about an hour to be live because I have to go to work tonight. But it's like it begins to bother me that this is how they're indoctrinated to think about me. And I want to get that out front, but I'm starting to dislike the whole idea of calling it subjective ethics. I think it's more like secular ethics, because to me, that makes more sense. That seems to make more sense. I'm a nice young man. Man, thanks. Uh, Man, this is like the second time somebody's mentioned sparkly with me. So I guess I'm going to have to start putting sparkles in my comments, I guess. But, um, but I'm getting past this whole idea of of, how shall I say it? It's not really subjective versus objective anymore. I'm still waiting for somebody to prove to me that objective ethics even exists. So I'm kind of there with that, but uh, I just don't think it's possible for objective ethics to exist because they would have to stand outside all these relationships where morality is the issue. Okay, morality is all about relationships and how we behave towards each other, what's right, what's wrong behavior. This is all stuff that you can engage in 100 different ways. And I don't like the whole objective subjective discussion in the first place. I'm prefacing all this because the person I'm having this discussion with in the comments starts out with this kind of assumption, and I just don't run with that assumption. I think I like the term more either religious um, ethics or not. Okay, but we're going to get into this stuff. That is absolutely not necessary. Okay. Morality is very much about relationships with each other, what's right or wrong behavior. You don't need a God for that. I've done it now for 8 years. Okay. So God is not necessary for the equation. You can Occam razor him right out. So it's not, sorry, how I should behave towards somebody else. Often God doesn't have anything to do with it, or a concept of God doesn't have anything to do with it. And if you have an Islamic person and a Christian person and an atheist person in a room, how they relate to each other, God is going to be different for two of them and non-existence for another, but there's still morality there. So, but let's start off with the first comment this guy gave me, where he says, if you're an anti-theist, does that mean you're anti-objective morals? And my response is there's no such thing as objective morals. It's like saying you're anti-unicorns. I'm not against objective morality. I just don't buy that it exists. Okay, in order to have objective morality, you'd have to have the side of your Thero's dilemma, where you have um, this moral system that God just recognizes, and in which case God isn't necessary, because the moment you say God is the one who gives morality, you have this problem of, okay, now that morality is subject to that God. So it's not objective either. Okay. And every time somebody proposes to me a moral system, I point out that it's subjective to something else. And so that's why I don't really like the term subjective versus objective ethics anymore, because I think one is just non-existent and the other one is so misconstrued. I'd rather talk about secular ethics, okay, because then that brings in reason, that brings in consideration of harm, it brings in cost benefit analysis, it brings in all these different tools to look at a moral question that doesn't have to do anything with God. And then you can have religious ethics, because I think that's really what it comes down to. You have the divine command, religious ethics, versus the secular, we're not going to have God in it, ethics and morals. So that's this. So the conversation, but I also want to talk about the tactics of this particular person. Now, the problem, of course, is the username. I usually don't respond to comments from usernames that are like letter with a whole bunch of letters and stuff after it, especially. But this guy at least took the time, or person took the time to change the front letters to ACE, whatever that means. And so I can tell right now, even with this just opening question, that it's a baited question. Okay. So it's really a baited question. The problem I have with it is he's trying to get me into this discussion of objective morals. And I'm like, I don't believe objective morals exists. Okay. I don't buy that objective morality. If a moral system exists that's objective, it doesn't have a God attached to it. It doesn't have a single human being attached to it. It's just a moral code, sits there on its own and tells us all how to live. But it can't be connected to a God, because that would make it subjective to God. So I just don't believe in objective morals. And to me, it's like saying you're having anti-unicorns, because it's like, I just don't buy it. So, uh, hey, thanks. I appreciate that. All the shout outs I can get. Hey, welcome, Alex. Appreciate you being here. I think I had somebody else. Yes. Filbert, the mighty Filbert is here. Thank you. Appreciate you guys. But at this point in the conversation, I'm already realizing I'm being baited into what I would consider this automatic moral assumption that Christians have, that you need it. Those are objective codes. Okay. You're misconflating what objective means in moral discussions. Okay. You can have objective rules out of a secular ethic. Okay. And those criminal laws do exist, and most of them don't have any reference to whatever God is. Okay. Most of them just reference human behavior and the human relationships, which makes them subjective in that sense, but objective in the moral code aspect of it. You're not being very nuanced in your conversation here. Okay. There's a lot of nuance when you talk morals and ethics, and that's just the truth of it. So then he goes into this. This is where the conversation took a very negative turn, and it didn't take long. It was like saying you're an anti-child essay. I assume he's talking about sexual or anti-sex trafficking. It's not actually wrong in your worldview, correct? Now I'm going to be straight up. This is this is just plain insulting. Okay. The assumption behind this is that if you don't have a worldview with God, you can't come to the conclusion that sexual assault or sex trafficking are wrong. And I just want to get to my response. It's like, this is absolutely wrong. You make the erroneous error that morality being subjective doesn't lead to objective moral rules. There are many subjective moral systems, all of them really, because there is really no objective moral system that I can find. And none of them say sexual assault or sexual trafficking are good or right. You need to educate yourself more on subjective moral systems before making such an erroneous conclusion. The fact is, the biblical worldview, and I want to stress this very much, leads more to the possibility of sex trafficking than mine. The Bible supports both slavery and slave trafficking and the taking of virgin war brides. So underage war brides being traded and sold as slaves is far more likely under the Bible's rules. That morality being subject to God's decrees. No, that's really. So they arrived on Mount Sinai and didn't know that it was wrong to kill people. They arrived on Mount Sinai and didn't know it was wrong to steal. I'm sorry, we have law codes that are far older than the Bible. The Code of Hammurabi, for instance, which the Bible draws heavily from. That is just an untrue statement. Okay. And once again, if you make morality subject to a God, it's subjective. There's no such thing as objective morals. I can't find it. There's no objective moral system that I can find. It's all subjective to the people involved in the morality. You're misconstruing two things. This just does not work. Okay. Okay. Sorry. People began to develop the idea that killing each other was wrong because they didn't want to be killed. Okay. The idea, it's absolutely it's still subjective to that, but there are moral law codes that the Bible clearly borrowed from, the Code of Hammurabi being one of them. I do believe, you have the Gilgamesh epic, but that also has some moral codes in it the Bible clearly borrowed and stole. I'm not trying to be rude here, but they had moral codes long before the Bible showed up. Okay, long before God supposedly exists. Not to mention the fact that we now can completely declare the entire life of Moses and Joshua and the conquest of Canaan basic first grade myth. Okay, there's absolutely no evidence to support it at all, to the point that it's significant in its absence. So what would I say to someone who chooses Christianity just because it's better than having no options and chooses it mainly because of good morals? What good moral thing is in Christianity? Okay. I mean, I think the problem is the propaganda is pretty hard that you have to have a God to be moral. And this is one of the things I deal with all the time as an atheist. Um, it's it's just the problem with it, okay, is I don't see the Bible as a moral book anymore. And it's a religious indoctrination book. Okay, I would say that. I don't see it as a standard of morality. I would ask them what moral code in the Bible they think is good, because it's a pretty good bet that they're probably cherry picking. And I would point to them all the stuff in the Bible that is morally objectionable to secular ethics, such as slavery. Um, so it's I don't I don't think that that's necessarily going to be a good conversation. I think what you're going to end up with is pointing out that the New Testament still supports slavery. You can take them to First Timothy, I think, where he basically says, slaves should be obedient to their masters as to Christ. How is that good morality? Um, the idea of having to have human sacrifice, where somebody has to die in order to get forgiveness. How is that morally good in and of itself? I mean, is child sacrifice, is human sacrifice a good thing? Um, uh, I just, at that point, I guess I would say, on what basis do you say that these things are moral, and point out some of the moral imperfections? From my perspective, yeah, I think Michael has kind of given me a better answer here. What good morals does Christianity provide, and which of these can you get to? You can't get to via secular means. Like treating each other well, you can do that whether you're a believer or not. Okay, the whole moral idea: if you do something for me and I do, then I feel obligated to do something for you. Okay, or the person can say, "Hey, don't worry about doing it for me. Pay it forward to somebody else." That's a very you're don't worry about it, Michael. But it's I would have the conversation of what exactly is in Christianity that is moral, because there's a lot of things that are morally objectionable. And if Christianity accepts the whole Testament, you have a whole packle of things that um, it's not there. Then why did he create rules for governing of slavery? He could have just ended it in the Ten Commandments. Okay, and I also point out to you, if he doesn't want slaves, then he doesn't have the slavery idea when Paul calls himself a bond slave of Jesus Christ, where he teaches, Christianity teaches you to all be slaves to Christ. Without the idea of slavery, that idea or concept cannot exist in Christianity. Okay, it's not about thinking about it too much, you know. It's so there's that. So there's another comment I wanted to get to. Oh yes, I would call that, yes. Secular history deals with what really happened, and biblical history deals with mythology. Okay, and there's a difference between history and myth. And I'm sorry, from my perspective, the Pentateuch and Joshua are plain grade A mythology at this point. There's just no archaeology, no historical documentation, none of it. There's no evidence of any of that actually taking place. And sorry, it just doesn't exist. Okay, it's not that it's the same, it's different. It's, yes, one is real and the other one's myth. So there's that. um I don't Here's, I think, another myth though, Alex. I don't think that anybody chooses nothing when it comes to morals. I think morals are just there because you have to behave towards each other in society, you have to deal with things in society. So there's not any of that at all. Um, so it's like you have to understand that all your behavior is guided by some sort of moral principles, whether you've really thought about them um, at all or not. So I don't get, you know nobody really chooses nothing. They have a code. Um, and my, yeah, so welcome. Um, let's see. I will always attempt to answer a question, but don't be upset if I say I don't know or I think the question's irrelevant. Yes, this is a good question for theists in the room. Hey, BS, welcome. Um, I'm old enough to get the reference. So, yeah, I mean, that's a nice secular ethic, I would say. I think I prefer. What do I think if everybody were an atheist? We'd stop wasting our time on nonsense. I think also you'd start developing moral and ethical systems that are actually concerned about everybody being a little bit more equal. But at the same time, human beings are human beings. I mean, I'm not saying it's one of those things that would solve all the problems. What I'm saying is you spend a lot of time um, wasting your time on myth, okay, and treating it as real. And so, it's why I say, don't take your time, money, and opportunities and waste them on religion and faith. It's a dead end. So there's that. So, um, I feel you, Alex. I get what you're saying, but I would always ask a Christian why they avoid the moral problems with their Christian morality, such as slavery and such as the subjection of women or the feel the need to control others. Um, Religion has its inherent control mechanisms, and that's probably welcome, Lisa. Uh, yeah, thanks, Asho. Appreciate it. Uh, why did he have to pay as God something to God? It seems like somebody with infinite resources could just balance the scale. The gospel message has never made sense. Once you get out of it, it just doesn't make sense anymore. Yeah, Sweden has a country with very little crime. They're very secular. Not a lot of them. That's your opinion. Okay. Current dictatorships are often backed up by theocracies. Okay. If you want a history of dictatorships, and it's theocracy after theocracy. Okay. It's like every dictatorship in the medieval world was a theocracy of one faith or another. I'm sorry, I don't know what that answer would be because we've never been there. We've always been in this bullshit realm of religion where everybody assumes, I mean, but that's your opinion, okay? And you don't have any data to back that up. So you're just, yeah, I think we would start to solve them hopefully a little bit more rationally, but human beings are human beings. So there's always going to be power struggles where you have religion or not, and there's always going to be difference of opinion on what should be done or not. So you're still going to have that, but nobody's going to sit there and say, God, you know told me to do this and take control. Okay, nobody's going to sit there and say, I have this authority from this book and this religion, and so therefore I get to be in charge of all of you. Okay, we're going to dismiss all that. You're going to have to justify why you have to be in charge. And so, me too. um, um, oh, agreed. But Islam is a religious and a political movement, and absolutely likes to dominate. You've given me a great example of how theism twists the minds of people to take power. Thanks. So, yeah, so there's that aspect. And they also are still currently secular. Okay. As one Christian theist, correlation doesn't mean causation. Just because they were Christian in the past doesn't mean that's what they are now. While they were Christian, their crime rate was higher, and now it's lower that they aren't. Okay. That's the facts. Okay. I don't really care what's on their symbols. Okay. This is the problem with too many people that take symbols way too seriously as if they mean something. And a lot of times they don't mean anything anymore. So, um, yeah, praying for people as part that actually comes into a moral discussion because from my perspective, what prayer does, it allows you to dismiss that natural feeling of obligation you might feel to help somebody. But prayer allows you to sidestep it and say, well, I'll pray for you. I don't have time to actually do anything to help you right now. And to me, it's a moral sidestep. It really is this idea of I'm going to set aside my moral obligations to help you, which I should have. Um, so, uh, so I'm just going to pray for you and make it look like I did something for you. But have you really done anything? Is there really any moral aspect to this? And I don't think. I think that's one of the things religion does is it plays these moral games where if you were just being a decent human being, you would help, but you come up with a I'm a metalhead. Do you know something about metalheads? They are some of the actually, in truth, this is another great example of don't judge based on the outward appearance that Christians don't follow. Because there was a recent survey, I can't remember what it was, where I was reading, where metalheads are actually the most peaceful people. They are also people that actually help people more. Okay. And they didn't end up having horrible lives like everybody thought they were. So this is one of those cases where Christians have put up a real good false image of a group of people, and it just shows the reinforcing of tribalism. Okay. So, um, yeah, praying for the food. Yeah, because prayer is going to like get rid of the germs that might be on it if you didn't prepare it. Yeah, I don't know. It's just it. You know, I just, I, they, but to me, but people pray over things. To give you a local context where I live, there's a town to the west of me called Baldwin, and it's about 18 miles away. And every year they have what's called the blessing of the bikes. Okay, where a Catholic priest basically prays over all these motorcycles at the beginning of the riding season, and the whole town is like infected with like 4 or 5 thousand bikers, and they all come there to have their, some sort of protection spell put over their bike through God. Okay, I find it hilarious, but it's kind of the same mentality. But also with the morality of it, it's like, okay, you trust this blessing instead of learning how to ride your motorcycle correctly, learning how to ride it safely. Well, I got blessed, so I'm okay. Yeah. So yes, metal rocks. I was alive at the right time, I think, because I got to see Metallica, Megadeth, Slayer, and all those guys at their prime. So, um, well, I think that's it. Metal is a very aggressive music, and so you get all that anger and aggression out, and when you're done, you feel so much better. So, yes, prayer does amazing things. So, if most people don't understand it, it's kind of a failure of God to communicate it, isn't it? Yeah, I remember giving this example a long time ago. It's like, yeah, except I know that metalheads are actually quite kind to other people. So I don't know. So um Yeah, I wasn't technically allowed to either, Alex. But let's just say that I found a way. One of the things I did when I was younger is I played high school football, and we always had metal in the locker room, and I would ask them to switch from different songs, and then I ended up buying my own stuff, and earphones were finally coming to a thing in the '80s, and I got a set of them, and I was allowed to kind of keep it on the down low what I was listening to. I'm jealous. Um, it was a long time ago since I've seen Metallica, but I don't know. Jova, you're an outstanding human being, but I think if I have any objection here, it's how do you know such connections exist in the first place? I think so. There's that. Yeah, I used to play like clerics, okay, and D&D all the time when I was younger. Nobody else wants to play a cleric, but I always played like a thunder god mage, so that was always fun. Are you really equating being abusive to listening to a form of music? This comes right into the morals discussion here. If listening to a form of music causes a person to be calm and not do any harm and be abusive, I would say that's morally superior to family abusers who think that that's their hobby. Those two things are very, very different. Okay. I'm not trying to be rude, but that's very different. That's not really a good example. Um, so there's that. But yeah, so I do want to move on to this. I'm running a little bit out of time here. I got about a half hour. So his response to that is no, no, no. You're giving personal opinion and claiming it's universal, or you're saying it's wrong only in your own mind. But at the same time, you can't tell anyone that believes it's wrong that they shouldn't do it. And this goes back to the sexual assault and sexual trafficking. And at this point, I kind of realized that the tactic is he just straight up did not listen to what I said in my last comment. My last comment talked about the fact that there are many moral systems that have these things that are reasoned out, and he completely avoided the biblical worldview comment that I made. And so I kind of, at this point, it's like, okay, I'm dealing with some sort of apologetics um, trope moral discussion script. And so it's yeah, it's that. So I don't know. My problem at this point with the discussion was he's clearly following the script, and this is a tactic that they lot to do. They're not going to get off the fact they're trying to accuse you of a bunch of stuff that I can't really say that that's wrong. And I'm like, I absolutely can say this is wrong. Okay. Sexual assault, sexual trafficking cause harm to certain individuals to the benefit of others. Just a basic moral cost benefit analysis gets rid of the problem to me. Okay. And the problem is with a lot of theists, oh, well, that's not enough. But they don't say that it's not enough. They do what this guy did, which is say, you haven't given justification, which is what he'll say later. And I'm like, I'm literally giving you all this justification of why that is the case. It's absolutely immoral in and of itself because it causes harm to somebody else. Okay. And this is what human beings as a society have determined. My whole point to them is morality is a societal thing, not an individual thing. We create moral rules because it's about survival, and there's plenty of people. Uh, so there's that. It's it was just very frustrating because I suddenly realized that I'm in a conversation with somebody who's going to stick to the accusation rather than listen to what I have to say. And at this point, I want to talk about a technique to any theists in the room. Don't do this. You're not, if your point is to win me over to your side, this is the furthest tactic you shouldn't do it. It just pisses me off. Um, I'm not the one that says sexual assault is wrong. There's a whole community of people called humans that say it's wrong. There's a whole community of people that say it. I, I'm sorry. It's like, quit sitting here and telling me what I believe too, because this guy is going on about this is what I believe and this is the way I think, but I can't really say that it's wrong. And I just like literally told him why I think it's wrong. And and somehow that's not good enough for him. It's the assumption that you need a God to be moral. Okay. And I'm sorry, that's just not true. Okay. Um, oh man, I tell you. Great discussion in the comments, by the way. I'll leave that one alone, though. This is the other aspect that I think that theists don't say what they say because they utilize this idea of God's objective morality being connected with God as a way to control people. Okay, that you have to go to the Bible or whatever for moral systems. There was a comment in the comments I skipped over, but it's like the idea that if something isn't outlawed by the Bible, okay, then it's probably not immoral. Well, slavery and sex trafficking, I can see are not really outlawed by the Bible. So I'm not really sure that there's good morality there. So it's like that. Oh man, I read that book a long time ago. Good one. Um, um, Here's my question: isn't either people can use the Bible to justify the evil they do, and others say they use it to understand how to be moral. Same book, way different interpretations. And this is indeed the problem with divine command theory, because we have two problems. One, which God is the one that gave the moral code, which religion is right about that. And then we have the problem of interpretation. Okay, how is the moral code interpreted becomes a real big issue because the moral codes apparently aren't clear enough to not be the subject to interpretation. Okay, so yes, it does, and the Bible allows for it. Okay, and admonishes it and admonishes slaves to be obedient. If you, what you're showing, Drink Water, is you have better morality than the Bible does. Your own humanness has better morality than what the Bible does. So, but getting back to the Mighty Filbert's question, I think people like to use religion and morality because it allows them to shift gears. It allows them, because of their religion, whereas if they were following a secular morality, there'd be a certain obligation. They can escape that obligation because that person doesn't follow the same faith I do. It's why the morality, like you look at the Islamic people with jihads and Christians with crusades, the justification is they're not my faith, so the rules don't apply to people that don't believe as I do. Okay. This is why religion is inherently dangerous. Okay, because you can justify pretty much anything. I want to get to my last slide here because he says you don't have justice to jail anybody, and it's like, dude, I don't jail people, society does, but I agree with it because I don't want other people to be harmed, and I would like some sort of sense of justice to be done for the person where the scales are balanced. Um, uh, Once again, he makes the assumption that I'm just a biological machine and hard determinism is the rule. And I'm really starting at this point to get real the guy who rhymes with rim job vibes from this, because no matter how much you talk to the guy, he just stays on script at that point. I can absolutely make a distinction between what's harmful, what's wrong, and what's good. I can make those assessment using reason. I can do data analysis. I can do all kinds of things to analyze what the situation is and then ask the simple question, what is the best moral choice? okay, based on the information. With religion, what Mighty Filbert is illustrating here in his comment and his question is you can throw all that out the door, okay, and do anything you want. What religion ultimately does is allow justification of any moral system. Okay, and I make the point here in 4. The person who holds to divine command theory is in a worse position for divining wrong and what is harmful, as if because if God orders genocide, then the morally right thing to do is for the people to be obedient and genocide the other group. I can say that people who genocided had harm committed against them because they all lost their lives. Seems basic to me what harm and wrong are to me, I guess, in some respects. But the divine command person finds himself justifying the harm or wrong done to the other group because God told them to do it. It's not that it's not that I have the problem with defining what's objectively right and wrong. The person who is following the divine commands is strictly basing it on obedience. It's purely their only guide is obedience to God. Well, if your God tells you to do something like, slaves be obedient to your masters or go genocide this people group, then it's morally right to be as a slave obedient to your master, and then also morally right to go do the genocide. Because if you disobey, to be disobedient is to be immoral. Okay. And that's a problem. How do you figure? Citation, please. Okay. Um, uh, it's it's really the problem I had with this entire conversation. I'll you can always go back in the live stream and watch but morality is not just an individual thing; it's a societal thing, and most theists come at you with the whole idea of you can't do this, and it's like it's not just my decision. And that is a completely unverified, non-historical story. The only place it's purely the Bible tells you so. Okay, but there are plenty of people that are disobedient to God and do very well. Okay, you can use Bible examples all you want. I can look around and talk about people doing fine without Him. So I don't know. I just this idea, I'm sorry, with obedience ethics to a God, then you're basically defining what's right and wrong based on what God tells you. And so if God tells you to do what in secular ethics would be morally reprehensible, like killing someone, let me give an example. If I walk up to somebody and stab them in the chest and they die, just looking at it from that point of view, okay, would you say I was right or wrong to do such a thing? Was I evil? Did I do harm? Probably yes. But here's the difference. If here's the difference. If I go up to you and I can demonstrate that God told me to do it, is it now a morally wrong action? No, because according to obedience, authoritarian ethics, that's it. It's also a Christian's book, and Islam uses it too. You might want to expand your understanding of who actually uses the Bible. Quite a few people do it, and it's basically Abrahamic religions. But it's not just that, but this is where they get their morals and that to sit there and say that that book hasn't had any effect on how people do morality. That's just denying a major amount of history. Okay. You're dude, you really need to work on stuff. So it's just there. How so? How am I wrong? I'm sorry. If I walk up and stab somebody and can be proven that God told me to stab them, I am not morally wrong because I did what God told me to do. And you have stories like that in the Bible all over the place. Okay. Yeah, I agree, Azo. That's very anti Semitic. Okay. So Yeah, and Christ was an idiot. Okay. I'm not trying to be rude to you Christians in the room, but Jesus, if he, first of all, there's a great deal of question whether he actually historically existed. There are mythicists in the room that would give you a good case against him. I'm not there, but I'll tell you this: the Jesus that is in the Bible is made up. Okay, he's definitely yes, but that's just it. But the biblical divine command theory ethics, that is absolutely justified. I was just following orders. Okay. Because if God gives you a command, you have to do it. That is the morally right thing to do, even if it involves the death or harm to somebody else. And you have in the Bible countless examples of God doing exactly that. How is that different than hating somebody? If I just hated them, they'd still be alive. Okay. But I killed them. I did them massive amount of harm, removed them from the planet, you know, destroyed everything they were, everything they are, and everything they ever were going to be. Took all of that away from them, caused them a massive amount of harm, but it's okay because God told me to. Come on. Okay. So, uh, so yeah, I don't know. I'm sorry. If you're going divine command theory, you need to understand that your morality is based purely on whatever God you think gave the law tells you to do. You're not making an assessment of whether the action is harmful or not. You're not making an assessment of whether it does harm to another. You're not making an assessment of whether it causes some sort of power dynamic where somebody's exploiting somebody else. Doesn't matter. As long as God tells you to do it, it's right. And if he tells you not to do it, it's wrong. And I don't think Jesus improves the world. I think history has borne out that most of the wars in Europe were over Christianity and various forms thereof. So, you know, I think you need better evidence. You're just stating your opinion, intelligent atheism, which I think you really need to change your name. So, your idea that somehow Christianity made the world a better place, I don't think so. Um, Oh, you're going to be forgotten too. And because God doesn't really exist, your God doesn't exist. I pretty much state that. Yeah, you're going to be forgotten too. And you're going to be, well, you'll be dead. So you won't even be able to be disappointed. But yeah, it's kind of my moral discussion here, and my moral dilemma, and maybe some of the members and the mods can give me some advice because if you go back to the video and look at the conversation I had with this guy, was this a guy that was worthy of being banned because he was basically coming at me with a trope argument? Because the thing about him is, he's definitely just coming to accuse. Okay, he's not there for a genuine conversation, and this is the problem I have with moral conversations with theists. Is is it becomes an accusatory thing. It's not a conversation. Um, uh, Prove God exists to restart it. Okay, that's the first. The first goal of the theist is to actually prove that God exists, but they seem to want to avoid that job. Um, just not as well. I have thought about that. I've actually done that as a thought of experience, David, because Asimov's had his three laws of robotics, and it has an inherent flaw in it after a while. All right, thanks. But yeah, and that's all. But if there's no evidence for it, why do you believe it? Okay, well, it's like it's like there's no evidence for it. And like, well, the absence of evidence isn't significant. I'm sorry, the absence of evidence acquits people every day. Okay. It's significant. If there's no evidence for something, why do I do it? Okay. And when it comes to this moral question of God, well, you can't be moral without a God giving you a command. Well, prove to me which God exists and which commands are the ones that he supposedly gave. You know, I don't understand that. I still don't understand that logic among theists is I don't have any evidence for something existing. I can't prove that it exists. If I took it to court, I get thrown out, but I'm going to still believe it. Uh, so there's that. But no, it. Why do you want to embrace something that you can't prove is true? This is why faith is a vice and not a virtue, because it causes you to believe and act in such a way and order your life in such a way because of something you can't prove is true. I mean, you would think it's ridiculous if you're a Christian, you think it's ridiculous if somebody picks up the Havamal and follows Odin. Okay. Well, they can't prove a Odin exists, and the Havamal isn't really written by Odin. It's not really the wise words of the wise one, Odin. Why do they believe that nonsense? But then turn right around and do your own thing. oh, I tell you, the chat and my streams is often legendary level. I have to give it that. So I just I'm sorry, Theus, you have a lot to prove and you have a lot to consider. And I think when you come to the moral question and do what this guy did, I did in this stream, and just come up with one accusation after another and one accusation after another, I don't have time for that. Okay. You're not interested in a conversation about morality and where my morality comes from. It seems like if you wanted a genuine conversation, you would ask what my basis of morality is, and then I would give it to you. Reason, human society, coming up with stuff that, moral codes that allow people to cause less harm and do more good. There's a whole list of things. So uh, I don't get it. It's like, it's just, I don't get it. Why you have to come at me like that. Okay. It's like, and I don't know, I always have trouble with people with usernames that are either user dash a whole bunch of numbers and letters, or, it's like, it's why my channel sub rate goes up and down like a yo-yo, because I think these people create these troll accounts. They sub to my channel, cause nuisance, and then when I ban them or somebody else bans them and whatever, all of a sudden. So yes, yes. I do want to give a shout out to BS Lewis. Great channel. I love your work. Okay, you are hilarious when you do your videos. Please do not give up on that. But yeah, there's the link. Go check out his channel if it's something that you might be interested in. I absolutely recommend it. I always have an appreciation for humor with a point, and BS does that very, very well. So there's that. So thank you. Thank you very much for showing up. And I definitely want to give a shout out to BS. Thank you, sir. Um, we have, we atheists have to kind of stick together. We're still a minority group. So I think I made the remark on your live stream that I have atheist friends in weird places, and it's like, I balk around. Um, oh no, it's not a problem. You know, yes, he puts a lot into those videos. So go and sub. They're Some of the ones he has are hilarious, but they also make a really damn good point. And I love that when people do that. Okay, I love humor combined with it. That's probably why I like George Carlin so much, and still watch him even many years after his death. Mm. I have no idea who this is. There's a lot of people that are atheists, so but there's also many, many more theists than atheists in the world. We're still way outnumbered if you look at it worldwide. So there's far more people that believe in spiritual stuff and God than us. So you have this Christmas special? That'll be interesting. That'll be interesting. I got some stuff coming up. I'm going to talk about that real quick, and then I got to sign off because I got to get ready for work. But yeah, I got questionable witnesses. The second part this week of dealing with the Christmas story, where I'm going to talk about the actual Christian story and the no room at the end thing and all that stuff, and then uh, and and then I've got some other stuff planned. I want to do a more formal reaction to Christian or Charlie Kirk in the video I did live last week. I want to get that down to like a 20-25 minute video of responding to him because I think he makes a lot of it. And plus, response videos get me views and get me subs. So I got to do one or two of those every week just to pay the bills, so to speak. Um, and so there's that. Uh, Live stream this. I'm going to tell you something. I'm going Rapid Reflections on Saturday. It might be on Friday, it might be on Saturday, depending on my schedule. I'm sorry I had to delay it so late last week, but a lot of you couldn't make it because of that. But I'm I felt it was more important to watch my daughter in her first play perform, or my granddaughter in her first play for support and support that. It was a Christian play, so I had to deal with that. But it's looking at my granddaughter who's going to be 11 soon, and she's really trying to come into her own, and I wanted to make sure she was supported. So there's that. Uh, yeah, I've always loved B.S. Lewis's name because I now find C.S. Lewis to be a lot of BS, so it's fitting. Um, I don't know. I'm working on, now that I have this capability, I think, some collabs. I'm actually considering looking for a co-host for Saturdays so we can go longer. Um, no, I'm not going to do that. so yeah, Grandpa, Mr. Ed. I try to be a good grandpa. I love my grandkids and they're awesome, and nobody can tell me otherwise. So that's what's coming up. I'm Christmas week is going to be a little bit different because I have to work different days. Like I only get Friday off this weekend, so I'm going to do Rapid Reflections, but I'm going to be in a little bit of a hurry, like tonight, because I have to go to work because I get Tuesday night instead of Saturday night off next week. So got to make up for it. So next week's going to be kind of weird because of the holiday. There'll still be some content, and we'll see what happens. Some live streams, and of course, I'll continue with Questionable Witnesses, which is starting to pick up steam as a series. It's getting a lot more views than usually a Bible study does. So hopefully, as it grows and gets bigger, more and more people will watch it. So it's kind of working out for me. So we'll see what happens there. But I want to thank everybody for stopping by. It's been great. It's been funny, but I wanted to readdress this person with their moral comments. If you try this with me, I'm probably going to ignore you from now on. If you want to have an honest conversation about morality in the comments, I'll be glad to do that, but don't do what this person did. This is just accusatory and nonsense. I don't know. BS and me, yeah, maybe. I guess both me and BS have the same problem with live streaming, though. If you ask him, he'll tell you it's something new to him and it's something new to me. So we'll see. So, but thanks everybody for stopping by. I appreciate all the likes, shares. Please hit all the buttons if you haven't. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, I'd appreciate it if you would. If you haven't liked the video, like it so it gets a little bit noticed. Thanks to all my members, to all my mods tonight. Thank you very much. I appreciate all of you. I want to thank everybody for stopping by. And as always, live your best life. You only get one go around and then it's over. So make sure you're giving all your time, money, and opportunities to the people you love and care for, to yourself, and to make this a better world. You'll be happier if you do. Don't waste it on the trappings of religion and faith because that's a dead end. I speak from experience. And as always, thanks for stopping by, guys, and I will catch you next time.